Hi, Dave. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How is it going?
Oh, it's great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation.
Beautiful, beautiful. And thank you so very much to you for being here. You see, oftentimes, yeah, Dave, I love to thank my guests for two main things. And you see, I say this all the time, and now I think it has even become an anthem because I say it always. So, firstly, Dave, I want to thank you for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now because you invested in yourself. And oftentimes I love to make reference to you, the amazing mango tree. You see, Dave, some months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, there was this tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry, I just walked past it. But you see, Dave, just recently, okay, I was on that same road. And this time around, a lot's changed about the tree. You see, the tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance. And instantly, I got the urge to move closer and have a good look. Man, Dave, when I got so close to the tree, it wowed me because now the tree's got amazing mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches. And you see, not just mangoes, but ripe mangoes. And it looked so beautiful. And I was standing there staring at the beauty. And yes, in my mind, I was saying something like, "Hey, mango tree, now you're talking. Now you're talking." The point is, the fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing person that you are today, that alone has made it pretty difficult for me to skip you. And that's why you see you got a request from me to be on the show. So thank you so very much, Dave, for investing in yourself. And secondly, thank you so very much for saying yes to the invite. Because if you had said
Well,
nope, there
I'm
was
excited
nothing
to be
Elisha
here.
could do about it.
Your story is a reminder that oftentimes success is the part people don't see. There, it's the piece where the
Hmm.
mango tree is not as well put together. That there's a long period of time of investment and preparation that makes you well positioned when the bloom comes. So I'm excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Okay, let's get started. Yeah, I'm also excited to have you on the show, Dave, for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to move from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Dave, I believe it takes the application of knowledge. And not just knowledge, but the application of it. And you see, Dave, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. The second reason why I'm excited to have the amazing Dave on the show is for the sake of the listeners. You see, Dave, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, life-changing, eye-opening information. And I am totally convinced, Dave, that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or professional journey. We are just so curious right now. We want to know how Dave got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Dave, over to you.
Well, sure. So I always start my career journey discussion by saying I have a degree in computer science. I studied at the College of William and Mary in Virginia, here where not too far from where I live now. I'm about 2 hours, 2.5 hours away. And I intended to get into technology almost my entire life. My early career was as a consultant and as a product development person. So I thought I was be building software products on the internet. But I began my entrepreneurial journey in 2002 when one of the companies I was with, was the dot-com bubble burst, and they laid off a lot of the developers, and I decided that I could strike out on my own. And I ran what we call a managed services provider for about a decade. And this is a company that focuses on helping other small to mid-sized organizations with their technology needs. So help them guide what they need, how they can run their business better through technology. I did that business for about a decade, was super involved in both the local community, but also the technology community. I was a writer and a blogger and a trainer. I was involved with peer groups, and I helped launch them into Europe from the US. I was what they call the Microsoft MVP, which is where they recognize contributor to the community. I was a company trainer, did all of these things. And I had the opportunity to sell that business in 2011 going into 2012. And then I worked for software vendors again, helping businesses like mine grow and become better at the delivery of managed services, and did that for about another 8 years under two different companies. The second one we took public, and I stayed about a year post the public IPO. And then about 5 years ago, decided that one of the things that I could do was focus on digital knowledge. I was spending a lot of my time flying around, training people in classrooms, and realized that I could reach more people more effectively by leaning into digital. And so I launched the podcast, The Business of Tech, which is now a top 50 tech news podcast in the US and ranked all around the world, where I focus on 3 to 4 stories a day in technology, and I answer the question, why do we care? To give some kind of perspective on why the story is important and how people might use it in their IT services business.
Amazing. That's a very, very, very important one you're doing. And the fact that you're concerned about helping, that's a great one. And you see, it is very, very, very important to come in contact with someone who has this amount of knowledge, especially in this IT stuff, because, oh boy, a lot of things are happening in that sector. So I'm going to pick the first question from looking at the current state of the market. Okay, so what is the current state of the IT services market? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, it's a certain interesting time right now, because generally the signs are all very positive. The market continues to grow. IT services has been growing year over year for as long as I've been doing this, because customers need technology in their businesses, and thus they're investing in it. What we're finding right now is that there are two major market forces within that are something to keep an eye on. The first is we have been seeing price increases in the delivery. Technology itself is becoming more expensive, and so we're expecting some of 2025 to be consumed by that. The other piece, of course, is the growing risks of cybersecurity. Some of the criminals activity that's out there that's attacking small businesses, particularly small and mid-sized businesses, is consuming a greater share, and so you're having to spend more money on defense and on security than you might have previously. That's an important investment, but also not necessarily what most business owners want to spend their money on. So one of the things that we're finding is the people that are most successful in this space are the ones that lean the most into helping customers improve their business while at the same time managing those struggles. It is an exciting time to be in this industry, particularly with trends like AI emerging right now. But the fundamental of, hey, we're helping customers with their technology needs, it's pretty solid for a while, and we're expecting that to remain the same.
So you mentioned small businesses. I want us to pick the second question from there. So how is regulation affecting small businesses? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, it's different all around the world, of course. And I freely admit that my area of expertise focuses generally on U.S. regulation, although I keep a close eye both on what's going on in the EU as well as Australia are areas that I keep an eye on. So, but if I'm thinking about this from a global perspective, and I think your audience is a little bit more global, the element that you're looking at is that regulation is designed to help make sure that businesses have enough of the basics to be safe, to operate well, to make sure that customers are delivered well. The same way that we make sure that the people that do our hair or that are involved in medical or doctors or lawyers, the same kind of way we want to make sure technology has some level of guardrails to make sure consumers are protected. The interesting thing, of course, about that is this is often perceived as an overhead, the fact that a business owner has to focus on that. But I find that those that execute really well on being compliant with regulation end up with stronger businesses. So ideally, you're doing a really good job of leaning into that, because the end result is a business that runs better. But admittedly, you've got to do the requisite investments to get there.
Okay, I got that too. So let us look at ethics. All right. So what role do ethics play in big tech? Got it?
Well, in big tech is a different question than technology broadly. I'll say, that broadly, I've made an argument that I think generally for most businesses, leaning into having a clear ethical framework builds trust with customers and allows the business to grow much more steadily, potentially much more aggressively, and I find is the better end result. Now, you've specifically leaned into big tech with your question. And I would argue that particularly when we look at some of the differences between some of the big tech players, so for example, we're thinking like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Meta, some of those players, it's very clear that each of those has a different strategy related to ethics. Apple very much leans into positioning itself as the privacy leader, and they have put that forth to try and build trust with customers. We can point to Meta recently as taking a turn and saying that they're much more into quote unquote free speech and free expression. I would argue that that's a little bit of a turn away from that, and we'll see how performance goes. We're starting to see something of a backlash to their products. So perhaps over time, my thesis will be played out as true that people will not be as comfortable with them. So what I say, my personal thinking is that leaning into ethics is a good competitive advantage. Of course, there are more than one way to solve any particular problem. We'll see how this plays out over time. I tend to think that I'm going to be played out is that my thought is the strategies will turn out to be the way I predicted.
Yeah, it is very competitive, as you said, And one thing I also understood about that metal stuff is when someone starts something good and it just keeps going, and now it is getting a lot of attention and folks are really going around it, it tends to challenge others to want to take that same step, you know, like the other platform, X, where you have free speech, like they say, I feel like that's a leading example for the other platform. Okay, so we still have like two more questions to go. All right. Are you still here?
Of course,
And
I'm
and
here
thank
for
you.
you.
Yeah,
I'm happy to answer your
beautiful.
questions. Bring it on.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just curious, all right. What does hybrid work really mean?
Really good question. So the vision of the idea of being able to work anywhere is the idea that people are productive not because of the location they're in, but because of their ability to deliver on the task. So for me, when I think about the idea of hybrid work, what it really should mean is the idea of allowing people to have enough autonomy to pick and choose what makes sense for when they need to work and where they need to work to deliver on results. Now, I want to acknowledge this is generally true for just those that focus on knowledge workers. If you're in the hospitality industry, you need to be in a particular place, right? If you're in a factory, you need to be in a particular place. There are types of work that don't fit in this. But if you're in the business of knowledge work, dealing with just ideas, you should be able to be independent of location. There are some tasks that make a lot of sense that you want to have people physically together and you want to have them in a space that they collaborate on. And other times you don't worry about that so much. You and I are talking virtually, right? We can engage in a virtual environment and be productive and get to the outcome we're looking for. And what my vision of it is that it allows organizations to be truly flexible and focus on work output more than time and location. Now, I want to acknowledge that's very hard to do. Most managers are not good at that. And so many default into this idea of, well, hybrid means 3 days in the office, 2 days out of the office. I don't buy into that. I think that's lazy management, and that's not actually unlocking the value of that style of work. But okay, you do you. So for me, hybrid work is the ability to empower people the way that to make them effective based on tasking. That's the ultimate vision of it. There are other definitions where people focus just on this idea of, well, we'll have a little bit of time in and a little bit of time out. But for me, it's getting to that idea of let's build organizations that focus on outputs, not on time and location.
Got it. But you see, Dave, I think the employees still need to be taught more on how this work perfectly, because many of these guys abuse that way of working. I came across a speech where the president was saying something as to there are some federal employees who haven't visited the office in a long time, and they would have to prove that they didn't work somewhere else. And so I feel like many of those many people, maybe in this part of the world actually, they tend to abuse that way of working. So they should be more like, okay, you wanted to say something.
Well, I do. So I want to focus on, because you said something really important there. If they're not delivering, then they are not delivering on the promise of hard work. Employees have a responsibility in a hybrid work environment too, and that is to deliver the expected outcome that the business is looking for. So, for example, if I'm obligated to produce a podcast every single day, for example, as what is my job, if I stop doing that, well, yes, you're exactly right. That is the responsibility both of the employee to, hey, I'm supposed to be doing that, but also the manager to call out the, hey, you're supposed to be delivering this output at this level. Yes, I don't necessarily focus on where you're doing it, but if you're not delivering the output, well, then you're not actually delivering on your promise, and thus I will not employ you anymore. And that's my statement of, it does require a different thinking on managers to be very focused on the deliverable of the work. You have to be good at managing that. You're 100% right. But I'll also point to, if there are employees abusing it, well, they have bad managers that are allowing them to abuse that. That's the manager's responsibility too, to
True.
manage that. And so I don't want to just point the blame and say, oh, the worker's being lazy. No, the business is actually being lazy too, by not doing a good job of managing its people.
That's right. Very correct. I got that. And on to the last question. You see, Dave, today I just grabbed my iPhone and I went straight to Safari because I wanted to inquire about something. And I just saw this notification right on the Safari page. It says, in the last 7 days, 17 trackers have been prevented from profiling you. And I was like, wow, really? So the question is, all right, what are the latest updates on security and privacy regulations?
Well, it's still an open book, particularly here in the US. We still do not have a federal level US privacy law that protects user data. Now, they've started poking a little bit at data brokers and managing that kind of stuff, particularly to foreign. So you can't sell US data to non-US entities. But from a federal perspective, there's no protective law that covers what is allowed and what data you own and don't in the US. Again, in Europe, there is. So in Europe, there's GDPR. So you've got a different. In Australia, there's another set of framework around that. There are different laws, but for U.S. listening, my U.S. audience, there is no protection to that. So this is just the companies being able to do what they want with your data. Now, there are state level laws. So, for example, I live in the state of Virginia. There are some basic coverage around what can be done, but it is very basic. And so what I sort of say is the state of the realm here is that we have to actually understand, as consumers of the products, we have to understand the value of our data. If we believe that the data itself has some level of value, well, we have to recognize that we have to do something to protect it. We additionally have to understand that if the product is free, the company is likely monetizing it by using your data. So you have to understand that if you're using a free product, the company is going to make money somehow. They're making money off of you in other ways. So I think it is on us as users to start asking the question, what do we want this data privacy world to look like, and how are we going to make that happen?
Beautiful. I got that. That's an amazing one. Okay, so to bring this to an end, Dave, what would you like to leave the audience with? Like a final thought? And to those guys who would like to reach out to you, learn more about everything we've discussed, or even ask questions, how can that be possible?
Of course. I think that the big last thought is that there's both tremendous opportunity in technology, but also the need to have critical thinking around it. Like anything, you need to ask hard questions. You need to understand the financial motivations behind why the technology choices are being made, and you have to then make the right choices both for you and for your business. I make myself really available. I do a podcast nearly every business day. It's called The Business of Tech. You can find all the download links at businessof.tech online. There's a big blue button to find me on your favorite podcast platform of choice or on YouTube. I'm highly active on several social media platforms. I generally tell people to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always love communicating with people there. You can also email me at dave@mspradio.com. This has been a great and fun conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Beautiful. That's going to be the end of the show, Dave. Thank you for coming and thank you for educating us as to all of these IT stuff. It is really amazing. Thank you, man.
Thank you.